are listening to the Mark Lesko Podcast, a podcast by diehard fans for fans. Mark covers all things Penn State football and the Pittsburgh Steelers, as well as anything related to the sports and fitness world. Tune in weekly to listen to a couple of dedicated fans talk about these topics without filters. Thank you for listening to the Mark Lesko Podcast.
All right, everybody, welcome back into another episode of Steelers Central. Joined by Jared. I'm going to talk Browns postgame. I'm watching Red Zone right now, so don't plan on doing a real long episode. But Jared, we lost, of course. Everyone, I think, knew that was going to happen. Unfortunately, literally every Steelers fan I've talked to, they were like, yeah, we knew that was going to happen. I said, yeah, pretty much, unfortunately. So, I don't know why they do that, man. Every single year they do that. They lose a game and just make life harder on themselves. It makes no sense. But what did you think about the game, Jared? Oh, hold on. Go ahead.
Well, first off, it was about as bad play calling, execution, anything you want to try to name that was bad it was a Murphy's Law kind of night. It was everything that bad that could happen did. I mean, I'm not saying that you should be worried about a game like this, but I mean, Russ did not look the worst. I mean, when he was, those 7 missed throws, like probably were the worst throws he threw that whole game. I mean, he was 21 for 28, 270 yards and a touchdown. I mean, that doesn't seem like that was all on him. And where I think it really lies is just the exposure that we got from the offensive line, from the Browns' defensive line themselves, like the linebackers, everyone, of course, Myles Garrett had a huge night, which it's not necessary for that to happen for him because, yeah, he's a 2-8 team. He's on a 2-8 team, and regardless of what he can do himself, the fact that our defense allowed that to happen, or our offensive line allowed that to happen, it was just showing you how bad they are and where they're at with their health and or ranked. I mean, they're just not the best guys that you can have. I mean, yeah, Isaiah Salomalo, that was a guy that was on the Eagles. He was one of the better names for them. Zach Frazier, coming off the injury, he wasn't the greatest, doing what he did. Dan Moore can only do so much. He had a consistent season, but eventually, the wear and tear of a season is going to show. And, of course, guys like Broderick Jones didn't look that bad, but that good either. I mean, it was just sloppy play call all around. Everybody just really didn't do their job. So, I mean, what else is there to say about it? I mean, it's a Thursday night game. Mike Tomlin is notorious for, not showing up. He says it all the time. He hates Thursday night games. And by God, he's telling the truth. I mean, they just look like they were not interested in the win at all. And regardless of what the second half results were, because, again, it was bad weather conditions, the Browns had to put up with it too. I mean, I'm not saying that they had any excuse to look bad because the weather wasn't great, but the fact that we let Jameis Winston and guys like Jerry Jeudy and Ford and whoever else the other running back was, I mean, who was that? Just go up a little bit on the for the running backs. Yeah, I'm just looking for the it was Nick Chubb, so Nick Chubb, Nick Chubb and Jerome Ford. I mean, they didn't have the greatest game either, but it certainly wasn't spectacular on defense because, again, they just let big plays here and there happen. But we had every opportunity to win that game too. We did. How many times? I mean, we got the ball recovery. We had a huge interception that went our way, and all we had to do was kick a field goal or get a first down, and we would have won 19-18. I mean, would that have been the ugliest win or ever? Yeah, I mean, it would have been even uglier than the Ravens because of that weather condition. It seems to me like what their attitude about it is, when this is the only positive that I can take from a loss like this, where they know, regardless of our loss, And if the Ravens win, we're still going to be a half a game ahead of them in the division. So if the Steelers are content with just winning the division, but again, there's no guarantee because you still have the schedule you have, which is just insane. You're not guaranteed anything. This is a typical Mike Tomlin problem. And regardless of how you want to try to spin it, like any other Steelers fan or kind of justification for it, we've been witnessing this year in and year out, season after season. And it seems like when we could be the best team in the NFL, again, I'm not saying doing that against the Browns would have proven anything. We would have been 9-2, and we would still had a chance to get the number 1 seed and have a home field advantage throughout the playoffs. Like, that would have been so huge to have to watch like Kansas City Chiefs come to our place twice. And I'd like to think at one point, if we had to do that, we would win one of those games. Like, dude, there is talent on this team. I'm not disagreeing that guys like Jalen and Najee, who had very, very nice games, they were absolutely fantastic there. I mean, George Pickens didn't have, like, huge numbers, but again, how could you with those weather conditions? That snow looked like that was fierce. So, I mean, all in all, like, there are little things that happened in that game that shouldn't have happened. And the way that they were executing, they just didn't look like they wanted to be there. So a typical Thursday night game for Mike Tomlin. Just do ourselves a favor. Just etch a sketch it, guys. Just shake it off and just realize that we just have something new next time. But again, you're going to face a well-rested Bengals team, and we're going to see where we are from there. But I would chalk this more up to we really weren't in the game, or we weren't really into it, than we were like, just giving it away. I think this was one of those games.
Yeah. I mean, it was a terrible performance. They definitely seemed like they didn't want to be there. And the part that makes me the most mad is the fact that, like Ohio State, like when we lose to them, they talk a bunch of crap, and it's really it's dumb on their part because it's like win with class, but which they don't have. But like Myles Garrett, like he's like, yeah, I think it's proven now that I'm the defensive player of the year. And it's like, dude, you guys are 2-8. Like, are you stupid? Like, it doesn't matter. Your individual accolades do not matter.
Right.
But it means a lot to him. So
yep.
Yeah, they didn't win, and he was able to talk, and that's another annoying part. Another guy that plays for an Ohio team that has a big head and is not humble like at all. And unfortunately, there's that comparison with T.J. Watt, even though T.J. Watt is like way more dynamic and way better of an athlete than Myles Garrett. Myles Garrett is a good defensive end, but T.J. Watt is leaps and bounds better than him, in my opinion. So, yeah, it just sucks that they couldn't shut him up. But yeah, like that was so incredibly annoying that was the outcome. And like Jameis Winston, like that whole fascination with him, I think is really weird. Like, he wasn't that good in Tampa. In fact, he was pretty bad. And now he's on Cleveland, and he's like winning these games. And like Adam Schefter, he posted a video of him saying he's a national treasure, which I think is one of the dumbest statements you can make. Like, a national treasure, like they're not a case full of gold. Okay, they're just a person. So that's one of the many dumb statements that people say nowadays. But and Jameis Winston is not a national treasure. In fact, he kind of reminds me of Gronk a little bit. Like, he just seems goofy. But that's another story with this, is that they're making him out to be something. And I mean, if you follow Jameis Winston like I did, like famous Jameis in college, he's one of the most high profile athletes ever, coming out of college. He's one of the most famous people ever, and particularly in college sports. Like, he's right up there with Johnny Manziel, and he is being made into like this, I don't know, this just odd national phenomenon right now, even though he's an average quarterback. I mean, he really is. And I mean, there was countless stories of him and women at Florida State. And I don't forget that type of stuff. Like Joe Mixon, I don't forget that. Uh, Tyreek Hill, I don't forget that. James Winston, I don't
Yep.
forget that. Uh, the one story was from a girl at Florida State. Like I can never say like this guy's a national treasure. Like he's so funny when he has those type of stories behind him. So that's one aspect. And two, I mean, he really got what he deserved at Tampa because he was horrible. And now he's with Cleveland. I mean, he's bounced around. He was in Tampa. I think he went to New Orleans.
Yep.
Now he's in
Cleveland.
Cleveland. I mean, Deshaun Watson has not worked out at all. I mean, that's most Browns thing you could do is guarantee a guy 200 some $1 million. I mean, that's insane. And I'm sure the Browns are even right now thinking like, well, if this guy is, convicted of any crimes, Deshaun Watson, like they could pretty much void his contract. Because, that's like kind of what they did with Aaron Hernandez and guys like that who were convicted of crimes, serious crimes. So that's pretty much the only way the Browns are going to get out of that. But yeah, we lose to a 2-8 team loses, or a 2-8 team beats an 8-2 team. It's unreal. And then we leave 8-3, they leave 3-8. It's like insane. And the other team they beat was Baltimore. So, and like the Chiefs, I'm pretty sure they can lose to Carolina today. I mean, so that's another story. But yeah, just overall very frustrating. Again, we got Jalen Warren 45 yards. So he was running really well, and they took the ball away from him, of course.
Yep.
Jalen Warren had a touchdown. Russell Wilson threw a touchdown. And I think they had 2 field goals because they went for 2 the one time, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, just didn't have a 100-yard receiver, didn't have a 100-yard back. And it's basically Penn State's offense. I mean, they're literally identical. No distribution of the ball. Like 4 guys get the ball. And at the end of the day, you lose to a 2-8 team. So, I mean, Penn State's stats last night were very similar. The fact that they were like, no one received any yards really. Tyler Warren didn't even have a touchdown. I mean, it's crazy. They're very similar. They're in terms of how bad their offense is. So yeah, just the overall, just the smack talk and the arrogance that comes from the Browns when they beat us, and clearly the weather was a factor. And then, of course, George Pickens says something. I mean, he can't keep his mouth shut. I mean, he's a typical diva receiver. Unfortunately, the Steelers have had a few of those recently, and he's another one. And he's not even as good as those other guys. He has a great hands, but he's not as good as those other guys that we've had as divas that have come through our program. So it's pretty crazy. Kevin Hunt said yes, yes, and yes. See you in 2 weeks, Punk Pickens. So he must like, who does he like? Who do we play in 2 weeks? The Browns again.
Yeah, we play the Browns. Yeah, this must be a Brown guy.
Yeah, which that's
Browns,
fine.
Man.
That's fine, Kevin. I think Kevin agrees with us. I'm sure he agrees with what we were saying. I mean, George Pickens, like the guy, they lose, and then he's like, yeah, the Browns aren't that good. I mean, that's such a just like, why say that? I mean, you just lost to him. So, and I don't even think it's like one of those, what's that say about your team if you just lost to them? I mean, the weather was certainly a factor, for sure. But, I mean, the offense was horrendous. Arthur Smith couldn't call the play to save his life. And I don't blame Russ. I mean, either he didn't have time or, he did hold the ball more than he should. He always does that. But
he always does that.
It's Arthur Smith, man. Like, he's not doing very well. I mean, I don't think they're ever going to win a Super Bowl with Mike Tomlin as the head coach. They can, but I don't think they will. I mean, they can compete this year, but There's no way they're ever going to make a Super Bowl with an offense like this and beat good teams. So,
but you got to remember too that it's like we did have a short week. We went through the gauntlet with Ravens. I mean, regardless of what people want to say that we didn't win that game or the Ravens lost them, beat themselves, whatever. I mean, I understand that we didn't put ourselves in the best position to look extremely impressive, but in the end, we did win that game. I think we had a lot of like our mentality and focus on it. And then you're asking us to go and face yet another AFC North divisional opponent. I mean, it's not the easiest thing to do because, again, if there's anything that we can say about the AFC North as a division, it's one of the toughest divisions to play each other in. Like, you can say what you want about how bad the Cleveland Browns are, how inept they are all around, but in the end, it's just about what we know about each other, and they know how to expose what we are not good at or what we are weakest at. So in the end, I know Russell Wilson had a decent game. He didn't do a whole lot to ruin it with the exception of that one fumble. You take the fumble away, he had a really good game. It's just really about offensive playing and the ability to, execute. And I just feel like we're just more concerned about the most important games. And again, could you have thrown that game away? You really could have. You could have done that. And that's what they did. They treated it as a game you threw away. And I guess we're just on to the Bengals this coming week. We're both going to have technically a bye, both of us. I mean, we have more than a week off. So it's definitely one of those things where you rest up, you just collect everything. Know that we're going into Cincinnati, and it's going to be tough. It's going to be a pretty gutsy kind of back and forth game. And I mean, we're going to have to score on Cincinnati. If we're going to win again against a team like Cincinnati, we're going to have to put up at least 27, 28 points against them if we're going to have a shot. Like, we can hold them to 24, 26, but probably nothing less because Joe Burrow and company with T. Higgins and Jamar Chase as your weapons, jeez, I feel bad for guys like Jackson and Porter Jr. this week.
Yeah. I mean, overall, it was a horrible game. They didn't look good. The offense couldn't move at all. They made Jameis Winston and the Browns look better than they actually are. I mean, it was bad. And they had the game in hand, and then they blew it totally. I knew when they got that interception at the end that it meant nothing, that they were going to still come back and win. I mean, I knew that would happen. So I knew they would probably go 3 and out, like you said, and then they came back and won. I mean, what more can you say? So
I get it, dude. I mean, listen, you're talking about this whole division again. We still have like 2 against the Bengals. We still have 1 each against the Browns, 1 more against the Browns and the Ravens, and then the whole structure of the Eagles and the Chiefs. So I mean, we're talking about the most important stretch of the season. I mean, are we a playoff team? Absolutely. I do believe this. I mean, again, short week. You had so little time to prepare for your own division. And again, if they know how to expose you, they're going to do it. And we didn't care to show up in it. I mean, it was kind of a thing where we did have them won, but we just chose not to play to win. So it's one of those things where that's on coaching. That's how they want to handle it. That's their business. We only as fans can want them to win. But if they want to throw one away, that's their choice. That's how I'm taking it. I'm always going to love this team. I know that guys like Watt, Hayward, and Fitzpatrick, all of them deserve a chance to get all the way to the Super Bowl. Now, with a team like the Chiefs, a team like the Bills, I mean, maybe even the Texans. Now, again, the Ravens aren't going anywhere. They are going to still be in this conversation. So you're looking at 4 or 5 teams tops in the AFC. Could we beat any of those 4 teams if we had to go to their fields? I mean, I think we may have a shot against a team like the Texans. I know we can beat the Ravens. I know it. We have beaten the Ravens 4 or 5 times in a row. And it's going to come down to, can we win there when they know the situation? I mean, you have at Eagles, at Baltimore, and home for the Chiefs. Believe me, I'm not saying I'm skeptic, but if there's one thing that they must do against the Bengals, if they just win the game with a huge offensive performance, that's what we're going to have to look for next week. We're going to have to see if the Steelers can still put up 30 points a game, because that's what it's going to take against a team like Cincinnati. Will the Cincinnati Bengals ruin our season because that's what they can do? Absolutely. We don't have any reason not to think that they can't come out there and ruin our chances, because if they're not in it, why else would you not want to try to ruin it? Because that's what the Browns did to us. So it's just going to come down to, can the Steelers just find a way to win this game against Cincinnati? And then you have to go home against Cleveland, which you have your opportunity to get your revenge back. And all of a sudden you go into the Eagles game 10-3. That's your best bet, of course. And I don't know. I mean, defensively, I'm not saying we're wearing and tearing, but it just seemed like there was a lot of, mishaps that with weather that it's like, yeah, it can go your way or not. And naturally the Browns were playing in the same conditions. So it was not the best weather situation you could deal with, but they had more opportunities than us. So, or they took advantage of what they had and we didn't. So I know that in the end, it's just going to have to come down to execution, play calling. Can they do all that right now? We're going to have to see, because right now, as of right now, the answer is no, because we didn't see it happen. So I know we need to just focus on knowing that we have the AFC North ahead of us. If we can just take care of business against them, then we have a shot at the playoffs. So,
yeah. Yeah, it's really it, man. I mean, overall, it was just an ugly game, and then George Pickens was fighting people at the end. That's just, yeah. I mean, that's just a bad thing. George Pickens fighting someone. I mean, he's almost like being a sore loser. I mean, he was mad the whole game. I think he's probably getting held and stuff, and they weren't calling it. But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, man, like the guy said that they weren't that good, and it's like, dude, come on now. I mean, you just lost to him. That's it. Take the loss. It was just, yeah. It just wasn't a good look. I mean, again, like the Steelers have had so many diva receivers recently, and they just, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, end zone with Newsom man in the last play.
Nothing.
In the end zone with Newsom man in the last play.
Nothing. Nah. It's supposed to be, like back pot. It was a back pot type play. The snow was, the conditions were so bad. I don't even think, the QB can see sometimes. And when you got conditions like that, it kind of at the opponent's home field, it kind of play in their favor. No, not really. It's not really such as a receiver. When the Q doesn't feel, comfortable with the, like I said, it's really the conditions that play a huge factor in today's game. That's what I'm saying. The conditions and away game refs. Just keep grinding. Like I said, conditions played a huge part in today's game. I don't really think the Cleveland Browns are a great team at all. I think the conditions kind of saved them today.
Yeah, and like I agree with that. I mean,
all right.
Yeah, obviously the Browns aren't that good. Like, they're not. And yeah, I think the conditions did play in their favor, I guess. I mean, both teams were dealing with it, but I mean, that's just not something you want to say, really. But I don't disagree with them. The Browns are not good, and then Myles Garrett, Jameis Winston, they're made into like these mega stars, and it's like, come on now.
But it was their Super Bowl. That's what it was. Bottom line, they were playing their version of the Super Bowl this season against us because they could be disruptive. I mean, they have players. They do. Jerry Jeudy is not a schlub of a wide receiver. I mean, Jameis Winston once knew how to throw 4 or 5 touchdowns a game. And again, Myles Garrett is always like a defensive species specimen. So it's definitely there's players. So they had their night. It was everything. Like I said, it was Murphy's Law for the Steelers. Everything that went wrong did. So it was like we saw the best version of all those players doing what they do. I saw Jerry Jeudy had like 6 catches for 85 yards. I mean, you're not going to do much better than that. In those conditions against a defense like that, that we're just talking about playing within this division. I'm always going to come back to it where like you can't predict that. I mean, again, you cannot tell me that you thought that the Bengals have any chance against a team like the Browns, and maybe the Browns beat the snot out of them. And then the Ravens lose to the Browns. We lose to the Ravens, lost to us. We might beat the Bengals. There's nothing about this AFC North that is just consistent. It seems like we're always going to be 500 against each other. So your best bet is to get out of it like 4-2 if you're lucky. That's it. No one else is going to go 5-1, 6-0 in that division against each other. So I know that you have to just, like you said, you just got to accept the loss, move on. And again, you got the Bengals coming up, another AFC North opponent, which I know they can score. They just have an atrocious defense. And can we take advantage of that? I certainly hope so, because I would really like to see Mike Williams get involved, like completely, like actually throw the ball more than 2 or 3 targets or whatever it has. Like, he hasn't really gotten a whole lot since the catch against the Commanders. Like, I have not seen his name at all. I mean, Pat Freiermuth finally had big moments in that game. Finally, you saw Pat Freiermuth get involved in the middle of the field, and it actually worked most of the time. So you're not going to tell me that the Steelers don't have the guys to do something. Again, it's just play calling, execution, doing it as well as you possibly can. And I don't know if they really care to. It was just one of those games where they just did not care to show up, and we didn't have the good result. We didn't have the win because, again, we had the kind of the same game against the Ravens where it didn't look like we were trying to do a whole lot, but just not lose the game. And that's what happened. We did not lose that game. So you're talking about a team that has faced a lot of inconsistencies and a lot of bad play. And again, it comes back to coaching. I'm not saying that Mike Tomlin cannot coach us to something, because we had, when we were playing teams that are either NFC or not our division. You're not going to do that against a team like Cincinnati or Cleveland or Baltimore. They're just not doing it. I'm not saying we're exposed by the AFC North, but man, they just know how to play against a team, a play call like we have. It's kind of subpar. Like, again, when I point out that you only run the ball twice, it's like, it's 1st and 10, it's a run. It gets 1 yard. You just, for some reason, think that the running the ball, the first play, is the ultimate thing. Like, I'm always seeing that as the first play, running the ball. Regardless of what you want Russell Wilson to do afterwards, I'm just so tired of seeing the results of 3rd and longs. Every time it's like we run the ball, we don't get anything. We run the ball again, we don't get anything again. Now we're left with 3rd and 9, 3rd and 8, and we're just never go anywhere. Like, you cannot constantly put that on your offensive line to constantly hold them to the other team, just like so Russell Wilson can have some spectacular heave down the field. You can't have just one trick, which, I mean, the Steelers technically do. Either we're running the ball efficiently or we have the moon balls that go 40 yards down the field. I just don't see the consistent drive of 8-10 yard pickups each time with a pass, or like 7 or 8 yards running. If we do that with the running game, then we try to run it through them again. It's like, well, regardless of what is going to work, the team is going to figure you out at some point. And I know that a team like the North sees it and they just go at it. So that's really what it was all about. The Browns knew our game plan pretty much down to the wire. So could we do anything against them? Didn't look it. So I'm not saying the Bengals will do the same thing, because I know the Cleveland Browns have a better defense than the Cincinnati Bengals. I do know that. So I'm not saying we are going to have another tough game, but we should know how to get back on track with the defense that the Bengals have.
Jared, do you have anything else to say about this game?
I am set with this, dude. Moving on now.
I have nothing else to say. We'll talk about big picture more, later this week. But as I've said in the past, man, like I can only talk about this team so much because they just make me so mad, honestly.
Yeah.
Like Penn State, I could talk about them quite a bit. I'm a diehard Penn State fan, but I kind of know what to expect with them, with the Steelers. I mean, Penn State has not had the success the Steelers have in this franchise. I mean, Mike Tomlin is just, yeah. I think we could make a change, but Yeah, like Penn State, like the Steelers, I don't know if that will ever happen. I don't know if either of them will ever be let go, unfortunately.
Yep.
Even though mediocrity is the standard. Mike Tomlin says the standard is the standard, and I don't know what his standard is, but it's not the Steelers standard, that's for sure. It's mediocrity, so I don't know what he's talking about. But again, man, it angers me, and
Rightfully so.
there's nothing else I have to say. So, and I know all the Steelers fans out there feel the same way. But Jared, if there's nothing else, man, we can hop off.
Yes, sir.
And we will see you guys Tuesday for the Penn State playoff show.
Yes, sir. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Jared. See you, buddy.